A brain-eating amoeba case that is almost always fatal has been reported in Florida. Here is what you need to know. Health officials in Florida confirmed on July 4th that one person in Hillsborough County has been infected with a deadly brain-eating amoeba called Naegleria fowleri. The amoeba typically lives in warm freshwater and, in rare cases, infects humans through contaminated water that enters the nose. Once in the nose, the amoeba passes through the sinus membrane and into the olfactory bulb. It enters the brain through the floor of the cranium. Inside the brain, the amoeba reproduces via binary fission and consumes brain tissue. According to the Florida Department of Health, Naegleria fowleri can cause primary amebic meningoencephalitis, an infection that resembles both meningitis and encephalitis. Symptoms start around 5 days after infection. They can include headache and a stiff neck, fever, nausea, and vomiting. Most of those infected die within a week. So how much should you worry? Fortunately, infections are extremely rare in the US. According to the CDC, only 34 infections were documented between 2009 and 2018. Of these, 30 people were infected by recreational water, 3 people were infected after performing nasal irrigation using contaminated tap water, and 1 person was infected by contaminated tap water used on a backyard slip-and-slide. If this isn't enough to reassure you, remember the amoeba can only enter the body through the nose, so if you go swimming, keep your nose out of the water or use nose clips. For more information on the infection and how to avoid it, click on the links from the Florida Department of Health and the CDC in the description below. And if you think Naegleria fowleri is bad, get a load of these parasites.
A New York woman was having horrible hallucinations, nightmares, and insomnia. Doctors thought it was a tumor, but it turns out results showed something completely unexpected. According to WCYB News, Rachel Palma's symptoms were terrifying. She couldn't sleep, and when she did, she had awful nightmares. Palma started to have trouble speaking, and her right hand would suddenly stop working. The 42-year-old even made phone calls she couldn't remember making. She was rightfully concerned, but several visits to the ER showed no specific cause for her bizarre behavior. Finally, a doctor performed an MRI which showed damaged tissue on the left side of her brain about the size of a marble. The initial prognosis was that it was most likely a brain tumor, or at least that's what neurosurgeon Dr. Raj Srivastava expected. Fortunately for Palma, she had no brain tumor. Instead, doctors found an egg. Yes, an egg. Dr. Jonathan Razzulli, chief neurosurgery resident at the hospital where Palma was treated, described it as, quote, "this very firm, very well encapsulated thing. It looked like a quail egg." Turns out the egg contained a baby tapeworm, a parasite. Palma had a parasite growing in her brain. As disgusting as it sounds, this was the best-case scenario for Palma. The egg was effectively removed and Palma is now parasite-free. The medical term for this alien-like parasitic infection is neurocysticercosis, and according to the Centers for Disease Control, it is usually contracted when you swallow microscopic tapeworm eggs which can be found in raw pork. So, for example, if the person handling your food touches raw pork and doesn't clean up well, you could end up with parasites. Citing the CDC, WCYB News reports that 1,000 people are hospitalized for this type of infection each year in the US. Razzulli also told the outlet it was super rare in the country. If the infection is caught on time, it can be handled with antibiotics. Just make sure you properly wash your hands when you're cooking, unless you're okay being a tapeworm breeding ground. A Chinese man who had been suffering from crazy headaches for about 30 years finally got his head right after doctors discovered a parasitic worm chillin' in his dome. According to Pair Video, the 59-year-old man surnamed Zhang told local news that he had been experiencing dizziness and splitting migraines since 1989. He was misdiagnosed by other doctors as having epilepsy and given the wrong medications, so it's no surprise the headaches didn't subside. The man finally figured out what the cause was after a recent visit to a hospital in Guangzhou. A head scan revealed a 10-centimeter-long worm had taken up residence in the guy's noggin. The little squirmer was finally removed through surgery, and Zhang is now headache-free. Apparently, Zhang had developed a habit of drinking unboiled stream water, always a good idea in China, and eating uncooked frogs and snakes. Doctors told him that's probably how he developed the parasitic infection. You think? Remember, next time you're experiencing a pounding headache, Advil might not help, because it may just be a parasitic worm.
The contents of a recent North Korean defector's stomach paint a hopeless picture of what life is really like inside the Hermit Kingdom. The North Korean border guard was shot several times while fleeing across the demilitarized zone to South Korea last week. Medical staff treating the defector say they found numerous parasites inside his body. Several of these were removed from his digestive tract, including one 27-centimeter-long roundworm. They were likely caused by farming practices in the north where human excrement is used for fertilizer due to a lack of chemical fertilizer. Known as night soil, this practice is notorious for spreading parasites and disease. And that god-awful practice was championed by this guy. And he's full of it. Very full. According to a report from the New English Journal of Medicine, a woman in France felt a tingling sensation in her legs and decided it was time to take a trip to the hospital. The doctors conducted an MRI scan and, weirdly enough, a parasitic tapeworm larvae was found in her spine. Parasitic tapeworms are typically found in farm animals such as sheep, cattle, and goats. The woman admitted she had a pet cat and had been in contact with cattle. The tapeworm may cause a disease called echinococcosis, which causes cysts to grow in the lungs and liver, among other organs, and if the cysts burst, it can be deadly. They ran a series of other tests as well and found her white blood cell count had increased to around 19,000. MedlinePlus.gov states normal white blood cell counts range between 4,500 to 11,000. The woman was then put on anti-parasitic medication. The New York Post reports after 9 months on medication, the woman was clear of her infection with no symptoms of any recurrence. You know, all people do is number 1 and number 2 at hotel pools, right? Ew. According to the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, hotel pools and hot tubs were linked to a third of all swimming-related disease outbreaks between 2000 to 2014. During that time, a total of 493 outbreaks linked to chlorinated or treated water were reported in 46 states and Puerto Rico. In total, the outbreaks led to over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Cryptosporidium, also known as crypto, Pseudomonas, and Legionella were responsible for many of the outbreaks. Crypto is a parasite that can survive even in properly maintained pools. Pseudomonas and Legionella are bacteria that can survive disinfectants in slimy areas of hot tubs, pools, and water parks. The CDC report also outlined tips on how to protect from germs while at the pool. The most common sense one being, don't drink the water, Einstein. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says outbreaks of a parasitic infection linked to swimming pools are increasing, and there have been twice as many outbreaks in 2016 as in 2014. Cryptosporidium, commonly known as crypto, is a microscopic parasite that causes the diarrheal disease cryptosporidiosis. Even in properly chlorinated water, it can survive up to 10 days. Swallowing just a mouthful of water with crypto can make healthy people sick for weeks. It can cause stomach cramps, nausea, diarrhea, and can lead to dehydration. The only way to get rid of the parasite is by treating the water with extremely high levels of chlorine that are dangerous for swimmers. Ohio was one of the states with the most reported cases. A total of 1,940 people fell ill due to the infection in 2016.
It may be a disease that is typically associated with developing nations, but a new study has found that parasitic hookworms are plaguing the southern U.S. 34.5% of stool samples taken from Alabama's Louds County tested positive for a species of hookworm called Necator americanus. Households in the county are reportedly poor and lack basic sanitation, with waste often discarded in the backyard. Residents exposed to the raw sewage may become infected with hookworm, which enters the human body through the feet. The parasitic worm attaches itself to the walls of the small intestine, sucking the host's blood, which in turn causes anemia, weight loss, impaired mental function, and stunted growth in children. The disease is a problem even for those who can afford to install their own septic tanks. Sewage problems run rampant in Alabama's Black Belt region. The area's loamy soil prevents water from draining into the ground, and heavy rains often cause septic systems to overflow or back up. Parasitic infections like hookworm are treatable with medication, but unless sanitation conditions improve, people will simply become reinfected with the disease.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.